my first step ever podcast, and I am Ishani Nigam, your host and producer of the podcast. This podcast is made for all the disruptors around the globe who know that they are made for something, for that one thing, but fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, the fear of fear itself holds us back at some point in time. But hey, those are the only milestones that if we cross, we are there to take our first steps. So, welcome on this journey with me where I interview people from across the globe so that they can share their story, their challenges, and you know that even you can surpass yours. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome on my first step ever. This is a podcast where we discuss the first steps behind the scenes of the first steps of any amazing, successful individual who has achieved what they had set out to achieve in their life, whatever the definition of success was for them, but what really went behind their first step, the struggle, the unheard, the unseen. That's what we discuss over here. Now, we have gone through many stories on this podcast so far. And I'm happy that each and every time when we have certain guest speakers, they do touch upon things that we might be aware of, we might have heard of, we might have seen of. But having seen that from someone's individual perspective can always bring a new perspective for us. And maybe that aha moment, or maybe this is what I felt that day, and this is what she's talking about, and probably I can understand or gain something from what she has gone through, and I can probably take action and work through my goals as well. So please join me in welcoming an amazing girl all the way from Australia, Trang Nguyen. Hi, Trang. Welcome on my first step ever.
Hello, Ashani. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I am delighted to be here and really looking forward to this conversation we're about to have.
Yes, of course. And I'm so excited to have a beautiful girl in my virtual studios today. And before we begin, I like to kind of touch upon a little bit on who you are or what you've been up to so far, so that I can introduce a little bit about you to our viewers today, our listeners today, and then really dive deep into what made you who you are today. So, my friends, Fran is a mentor and speaker for women who are hungry to pivot careers and build their dreams business so they can live out their potential and purpose with freedom and fulfillment. Amazing. In her mid 20s, Trang experienced a quarter life crisis, that led her to leave the sports industry so she could help women not just as athletes but as human beings as well. Oh wow, this is going to be something interesting that we're going to discover. And now Trang is determined to help others step into their greatest power and thrive in the lives of to impact them. Because ultimately she believes that when enough individuals are thriving, then humanity will thrive. This is beautiful. And this is all that we, discuss over here. And we like to kind of uplift people with us in the society who's listening to us today. And they really want to kind of, work towards what they want to do, build a system of whatever they want to so that they can thrive in the way that they want to. So thank you so much, Fran, for being on my first step ever. So let's start with, the very formative stage of Tran. What was your mindset when you were growing up? What kind of people were you surrounded with? If you can take us through that.
Yeah, for sure. So to give a bit of context, I am a Vietnamese Australian. I was born and raised in Melbourne, Australia, and my parents were immigrants from Vietnam. So naturally, they came from rough conditions. They came from poverty. They came from war. And because of that, all they wanted for me and my sister was to set up for the best life possible, a life of security and stability. And what that meant was they were very loving. They were very supportive of us, just with high expectations. They wanted us to do really well, and there was a strong academic focus. There was a strong focus and narrative on finishing school, going to uni, getting a professional career so that we could be set up for life. So yeah, I went to a private girls' school. I did have that. I was very lucky and privileged to have that experience, and that was my upbringing. Growing up in Melbourne, Australia, and going through school.
Lovely. I can actually relate with the fact, especially with your parents' situation. I can really understand what they might have gone through and what expectations that they might have, which can always have the pressure of, when you're growing up. But it's beautiful that you acknowledge that you have that somewhere back in your mind and you take that into consideration, but you also have your own voice. Now, having, gone through that sort of days in your growing up days in your life, that you have seen how life can be tough, but life can also be fun as you like to make it. This is what I get a feeling out of whenever I'm speaking to you right now. So, Tran, what I'm really interested to know, like when you were in your uni, your high school days, was there any sort of, shift in perspective while you were growing up because you were interacting with people from different backgrounds? That's also a very fragile time where you can actually be influenced and
Mm.
very easily persuaded to, go in different directions. How were you back then? Because people who are listening to us today, they might be in that situation or they must have crossed it, but they still have that kind of, mindset, that they are not very sure, like what they should be doing or whom they should be listening or what can really make them believe in what they're doing. So we would just like to understand a bit more about you around that time and how did you see yourself in life?
That's such a good question. And for me, because I had such a strong environment around me throughout high school, my parents, like a private girls' school in Melbourne,
Wow.
there was this really strong narrative of, achieve high results. The meaning of success is getting a really high ATAR, going to uni and getting that job. And interestingly for me, as I look back now, naturally, I just became a mold of my environment. Like I just absorbed up all those voices and those beliefs like a sponge. And I didn't really question it, like I didn't really have any other points of reference. I was like, 16, 17, like, I was a teenager and that's all I knew about the world. But I was generally happy. I was supported, and I had like friends who were on the same journey as me. So I felt like that was the right thing to do. Having said that, though, a few years after graduating from uni, I would say I had one of my biggest turning points, and that's what you mentioned before, like a particular event that started my existential crisis, my quarter life crisis.
We would love to hear, the situation that sort of changed you and made you who you are, because that would really help us understand what really, makes people take and realize that why they should be who they are and believe. But before that, I like to kind of, emphasize on something that you've just mentioned. And I'm so glad that I love, when guest speakers on the podcast are so genuine and so honest. It's for this reason that I want to kind of share is having spoken to multiple, guest speakers, esteemed guest speakers, and people who are listening to us would really understand that there are some guest speakers who are they do have the similar environment, where people are sort of trying to feed things in, but they're very strong in their own conviction and what they believe in, that they are able to, kind of differentiate and say, no, this is what I want, this is not right. But then this creates some sort of question in listeners, in our viewers mind, like, I am not like that, what does that mean for me, like where will I end up? And that's
Mm,
where I feel it's so good to kind of have different perspectives, especially like you coming in and, kind of being so genuine, that's how you grew up with, because sometimes not everyone has that point of preference, as you just mentioned. And
yeah,
it's okay to be in that phase because it's your own story, it's your own life.
yeah,
And that's so beautiful, that you shared that, because that's point of relevance. That's where maybe a lot of us can relate to, that. And it's just so that I can say it's okay
yeah.
wherever you are. And the interesting part is that what you brought forth is that if you are not comfortable with that, that's when the real, journey begins. And I think that's where we would like you to sort of jump in over here. And I would really like to know that what was that really changed the outlook for you?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you bring that up, Ashani. So thank you for highlighting that, because like in life, there isn't right or wrong, is there? There's just variety. There's just differences. It is what it is, and that was my upbringing. My parents gave me so much support, so much love, and they were doing the best they can with what they had. But then that brings me to the story of I graduated university with a master's of physiotherapy, and I was working as a physiotherapist for a number of years until this particular day that my existential crisis got activated. So what happened was I had gotten up to go for a run, and when I step out onto the sidewalk to begin, I hear a crunch. And I'm like, what's that? What's going on? And when I look down, turns out I'd stepped on a snail. This isn't the first time that this has happened before. And I know that a lot of people can probably relate because they've done that before as well. But for some reason, this particular morning, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like I felt guilty.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop thinking about how, because of me living my own life, choosing to go for a run on this day at this time, I'd caused such an effect on something outside of me. In this case, I had killed something. And this really got me thinking for the rest of that run, even for months afterwards. I was still thinking about it.
Wow.
And I started to see the bigger picture. I was like, I feel so guilty, about this one snail. Yet my whole lifestyle actually is already neglecting many different forms of life. Like I started to see that, my existence actually already has such a flow-on effect that I rarely thought about because I don't usually see the consequences of my simple day-to-day decisions like the plastic that I'm using or the clothes that I'm wearing. So this sent me into this realization that I, as an individual, have a lot of power. I have a really big footprint, but at the same time, I still feel so insignificant, so small. I'm just one person. And this sent me spiraling into this crisis. And I was like, I feel like I have all this power and I need to use it for good. But at the same time, every day I'm going into work and I'm teaching people how to just squat so they can shape their booty a little bit more, or how they can do this as a wrist exercise for their forearm muscles. When out there's like a lot of devastation happening, to the environment, to ecosystems that actually I have a role to play in, whether or not I realize it. And this, I went really big with my thinking and I had so much awareness around this. And I, fast forward about 9 months, I was still in this crisis because I was like, I feel like I need to do more. I feel like I need to become more, to have more of an impact. But I'm confused because I thought the definition of success was that I needed to just have a stable, secure job, make a lot of money, make sure that I've got like a roof over my head, I can put food on the table. Being respected was also something that was really ingrained into me, that's an important thing to strive for. So I was so torn and confused. There was like this conflict of belief systems and direction, that one direction my mind wanted to go, but the other direction my heart wanted to go. So fast forwards, I ended up realizing, you know what? I have one life and I need to use this life to make this world better. I need to have as much impact as possible and, spread ripples of change for good. So I actually pivoted completely. I stopped working in the sports industry as a physio, and then I started in business doing what I'm doing now, like helping people, not just as athletes, but as human beings. So that was a big perspective shift because I had to redefine my entire definition of success, redefine my entire pathway of life. And this was when I was 24 years old.
I really feel like you really need to have that heart of gold or that really keen sense of observation or reflection to, stop at the point where you did stop in your life and reflect that, what I just did. I mean, the guilt that you've gone through is definitely something very, very challenging situation, to have compromised your life just because of your lifestyle. But I think a lot of credit goes to you because you could have just moved on as well, felt bad, and thought of just doing something about it, probably being careful when you go out next time.
Yeah.
But you really took it to the next level, really thought through things, and which is incredible. And I think it's a very great lesson for myself and for a lot of people who are listening to us today, that if something really bothers you, if something really keeps coming back to you and like poking you somewhere in your head mentally, it probably is there to kind of say something to you, to make you realize something, because that might not be going well with your own values, set of values, or who you really are, which you have yet not understood about yourself. So this is an amazing,
Mm,
I would say, a story, a genuine, a real story, where we have seen, when you stop and listen to yourself,
mm,
try and dig deeper to understand it. Why is it bothering you so much? I mean, it happens in the world to so many people. Why you? Probably because you have that capability, you have that strength, you have that understanding to take things forward and make things better in whichever sense you kind of conclude from that situation. So thank you so much, Tran. That was amazing what you did out there. Really a heart of gold, I would say so. And amazing. I mean, honestly, like in my opinion, I feel like being a physiotherapist, you're already helping people in
yeah.
many ways. I mean, I would never say that that's not impacting life, and you're really doing it. But I think you took it to the next step when you say
Mm,
that,
yeah.
be helping athletes do better, but also helping them at a human level. That was
Yeah.
amazing. So I really like to understand, so this is one situation when you had the realization, you reflected, now you redefined your success, and now you wanted to work towards it. So how was that journey? How did you start your professional journey? What were the first steps that you took? If you can maybe, take us through those top three things that you really work towards to start your professional journey from here.
Yeah, yeah. And like taking one step back just for a quick moment, thank you, Ashani, for identifying that, yeah, as a physio, I still was already helping people. And it's still a very important role. There are people out there who do it amazingly. They do it better than I can. And I want to create that space for them to shine, for them to work with those patients. And then for me, like my heart was calling me in a different direction. So thank you for highlighting that. And then to answer your question, the steps to start my professional journey. So for me, after this career pivot and building a business, the first step was actually, something that a lot of people don't talk about. And it's not something so pragmatic, not something tangible, not from the mind, but it's from the heart and from the spirit. And that is simply connecting back to, okay, if I'm going to change directions, I'm not going to just suddenly start climbing a mountain just so I can get to the top of the mountain as fast as I can. I'm going to stop first and I'm going to survey which mountain I want to climb.
Amazing.
And this is so important because so many people, right, they get caught up in the race. They want to achieve milestones and successes and accolades. And they just like race up the mountain only to get to the top and realize that they climbed the wrong mountain. And that was
All
me,
right.
like that's what I did. So I learned that lesson. And before I even jumped into a new business, I was like, okay, what mountains do I want to climb? What is it that's really important to me in terms of what impact I want to have on this world, the vision I have for my lifetime, like going real broad, like real big, right? Like taking a whole step back and connecting with that first. So that's what I did first, and just getting really clear which mountain it is that I wanted to climb. And then from there, once again, this is not super tangible either, but I actually had to work on my beliefs, in particular my
Wow.
self-belief. And I really want to mention this because when we create our life, when we achieve results, it's not just because of the actions that we take, right? Like our actions that we take is also dependent on our belief systems. And if we don't believe in ourselves, then we're not going to even allow ourselves to pursue something, let
Yeah.
alone receive it in our reality, achieve it in our reality. So I really want to like emphasize that was a huge aspect of what I had to do, because I had to shed all of these beliefs I had that I needed to have a university qualified profession in order to be someone in this world. And there was so
Oh.
many fears about that. And I was like, oh my God, who am I to start a business to be helping people fulfill their purpose and start their businesses? Who am I to do that? Like I had to work through those beliefs, and I was so scared what people would think of me. I was scared of the judgments. And, in fact, one day, one of my clients did message me and she was like, hey, Trang, I love what you're doing, but the direction that you're going in, it's just not for me. And that crushed me. Like I felt
Wow.
the whole wave of, imposter syndrome all over again. But then I had to remind myself that, I can be the juiciest peach in the world, but there's still going to be someone out there who doesn't like peaches. That's okay. And that's okay. So I had to remind myself of that. So I had to actually do a lot of inner work on my belief systems, on my mindset. And then from there, the final step of what I did to grow into this direction of business is I had to, as cliche as it sounds, like take the first step. Is that relevant for my first step ever business?
That's the most important step, how much ever cliche it is. Because
Yes.
if you don't do that, how does your journey start?
Yeah, and every journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, which I know that you believe so much in, Ashani. But yeah, I had to take the first step. I had to make the announcement to all of my friends,
Mm,
to social media, that, you know what, I'm not going to do physio anymore. I'm going to start.
scary.
Yeah, I'm going to start this business. So then I did it. I registered for the business name. I had to take the steps. I registered for the business name. I changed my social media account name to the new business name. I went live on Instagram and made the announcement that, you know what, I'm changing directions. I'm not going to do physio anymore. I'm going to start doing coaching for you to change your mindset and change your life. And yeah, I had to take those steps.
This is incredible, Tran. I mean, I just absolutely love that how wonderfully you have taken us through your journey of what you did wrong while taking steps towards your goal, to start the journey of being who you are today, and kind of summarizing like which mountain you must climb. That's very important. Building your belief system. And the third very important thing that you sort of shared with us is that always kind of believe in yourself. Whatever people are saying out there, they may or they might not have the need of what you are serving, but someone will definitely have that need, and that's what you are here for. And very important to take action. So this was incredible. I really genuinely want to thank you for being so genuine and really digging deep into the challenges, the failures, the mistakes that you've done, and
Mm,
voicing it out here, because that makes us, everyone who's listening to us, talk about our failures in a very normal way, but we don't like
yeah.
shy away. We don't like what you did was such a scary step for anyone to go out there and
Mm,
just completely say, I'm not going to be what I was and this is who I will be, because you never know where it will land you up, and you've worked so hard for the previous identity that you had, and such a brave step. And this is why we say the first step is so scary and so difficult, and this all what went behind uh, in making Tran what she is today. So Tran, thank you so much for being on my first step ever, sharing your amazing journey. I had such fun, you know, uncovering, discovering such important bits and interesting bits of your life and who you are today. And I wish you all the best in your journey forward, because you have such a strong purpose. And I see that you are such a genuine person, and that takes a person really long way. So thank you for being on my first step ever. And before you take our leave, I like to request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that you really resonate with.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay, I love this. So I remember reading a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. He's
Mm.
one of the survivors of the Holocaust. And he shares this beautiful quote, something that he realized during the 3 years that he spent in concentration camps. And this is the realization: everything can be taken from man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, which is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And I always hold on to that, because like anytime life throws challenges at me, like anytime life gets difficult, anytime there's a lot of things that are out of my control and someone else might be treating me in a certain way, I just take a deep breath and I remind myself, you know what? I can still choose how I show up in this situation. I can still choose my own attitude. I can still control how I show up. And that's the most important thing, like maybe it's not about what we expect from life, but what life expects from us.
This is terrific. This is so good. I mean, you've given us the quote and you've also sort of given us a little bit of peek into the meaning of what it really means. And you never know what, I mean, you might have certain kind of understanding about what you want to be, but the situations might demand you to kind of show up in different ways. Like, yeah, I mean, you might have the worst day of your life, but how you really tackle that, manage that, and how you feel that day, what you bring to the table is very, very important. So, wow, Tran, thank you so much for being on my first step ever. And for all my listeners who are interested to know a bit more about Tran, I will leave a link in the show notes. And thank you so much, Tran, for being on my first step ever.
Thank you so much for having me. And I really hope that this has been helpful and valuable for the listeners.
Thank you. And for my listeners, as I always say, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. If you're still glued together on this episode, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And if you really want to hear more such stories from around the globe, then subscribe to my First Step Ever podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify, whichever platform you prefer. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my First Step Ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.